Told you a moment ago that Sajid Javid, the Home Secretary, who cut short his Christmas holidays, has announced that there will be 2 Border Force vessels redeployed from their current duties to help patrol in the English Channel. He spoke on camera a few moments ago.
Well, yes, earlier today I held meetings with senior officials from the Home Office, from the National Crime Agency and the Border Force to see what more we can do, both here at home but also with our French friends, in protecting our borders. This incident around the Channel, it remains of very serious concern to me, and that's why I declared it as a major incident a few days ago. It's both about protecting human life but also about protecting our borders. When it comes to human life, clearly, I want to make sure that we are doing all that we can to protect people. And we must remember that this is one of the most treacherous stretches of water that there is, 21 miles, and with people taking grave risk, really putting their lives into their own hands by taking this journey. And I want to make sure that we are doing all that we can. And that's one of the reasons I've made a decision today to redeploy 2 of the Border Force's largest vessels, which are known as cutters, from abroad back to the UK, back to southeast England, and they will be joining a cutter that's already there and 2 other coastal patrol vessels that are there. And this will help both with the human side of this situation, but also to better protect our borders. But when it comes to the borders, there's also a lot more we need to do. I wish there was one single answer, but it does require action on many fronts, and there's 3 other things that I've decided to do both today and in the run-up to this. And much of this work actually started weeks ago, but we've tried to step it up further. One is on law enforcement, both at home with the National Crime Agency and the other agencies that they work with, but better cooperation with our French partners. We already opened up, for example, just last month, a new coordination centre in Calais, which is a 24/7 manned centre with both British and French officials to help to end this kind of illegal migration from France to Britain. We've also decided to do much more work on disruptions, because whilst we know about the attempts that are successful in the sense that these are people that are making it to the UK, there are also many that are not successful, because the French have been successful in, I think, about 40% of cases so far this year in actually disrupting them and stopping them leaving the French coast. And the French and the British working together, we want to get the rate of disruption up, so we're looking at ways to do that, both directly but also in more covert ways. And then lastly, I want to send a very strong signal to people who do think about making this journey, is that we will do everything we can to make sure it is not a success, in the sense that I don't want people to think that if they leave a safe country like France, that they can get to Britain and then just get to stay. And that's why I'm working out ways with the French to increase the number of returns that we can make, to also send a very strong message that we will do all that we can, not just to protect human life, because of course that's the right and responsible thing to do at all times, but also to protect our borders.
You've previously said that bringing in cutters, these bigger ships, is actually a pull factor which could encourage more people to make that perilous trip. So how will you prevent that from happening, and what happens to those migrants that you do pick up in the Channel? Will they be returned to France?
Well, there's always a balance to be struck in terms of patrolling our waters. I mean, on the one hand, those vessels from Border Force, they have a very important job to do in terms of protecting our borders and trying to, whether it's, in this case, we're talking about migrants, but they also do a big job, for example, in terms of customs and customs fraud and protecting our borders in that way too. On the other hand, there is a human side to it, in that, you know, if you do come across anyone in distress and difficult situation, of course our officers will act and do the right thing. So there's a balance to be struck, and what I've decided today, if I look at the assets across Border Force and what we have, but given the current situation, the right thing to do is to redeploy some of those assets and make sure that we are both protecting human life but at the same time protecting our borders.
You've declared this a major incident. How many migrants have made the journey in the last month, and how do you know they're illegal migrants, as you tweeted earlier this week?
Well, we know, first of all, in this year, we've seen an increase in the number of crossings, but especially in the last 3 months. So of all the crossings that we know about this year, approximately almost about 80% of them have happened in the last 3 months. In the month of December, for example, we know of around 230 migrants that have attempted to make the crossing, but of those, just under half have actually been disrupted by the French and never actually made it in terms of leaving the French coast. So those are the numbers that we're aware of at the moment. And I do understand some people say, well, these aren't huge numbers, but let's also remember that our job here is to make sure this doesn't turn into some new route for ever increased illegal migration. So I want to try and stop it now as much as I possibly can. But also, this is a very, very treacherous journey. It's a lot more dangerous than other routes that we've known of in the past, and no one wants to see a fatality.
Can I just check again? If these cutters do pick up migrants in the Channel, will they be returned to France or will they be welcomed into the UK?
Well, we're working with the French on more cooperation in terms of returns, but if they are picked up in English waters, just as they are now either by Border Force or volunteers from the RNLI or others, that they will be, at that point, they will be brought back into British waters, and that is what we would do initially, but we'll obviously be assessing any claim that they may or may not make for asylum. But that's why I think the law enforcement work and the returns policy is very important to both crack down on these gangs and these gangs of people traffickers that are taking advantage of so many people by selling them a completely false prospectus, and we don't want that. We want to crack down. There's been some excellent work that's been done on law enforcement in recent weeks, especially the French recently made 3 significant arrests, and those suspects are being interrogated now, but I think there's a lot more to come on law enforcement cooperation.